This episode is intended exclusively to provide information and education to help individuals better understand cycles. However, this information is not be construed as professional advice as to the buying and selling of securities or other investment instruments. In no event does the host express any opinion with respect to or make recommendations regarding the purchase or sale of any particular investment instrument. There is a very high degree of risk involved in trading securities. Buying and selling decisions are solely within the personal discretion of each individual.
From the mind of Lars von Thienen, the most advanced cycle analysis, hot off the press.
Yeah, welcome friends and family of the Foundation for the Study of Cycles. My name is Lars von Thienen and we have another slot for Cycles TV. Today, due to the situation for the week, I want to talk about the BRICS stock markets, and for sure, let's use the opportunity to also analyze cycles. You might ask, so why BRICS? There is the yearly event scheduled happening this week. In Russia, we have a championship for that session by a very prominent person here in the world, and these countries are striving to achieve some interesting independence from the dollar and the currencies we are using. So this will also have an impact on our financial global situation, or could. So I think all eyes are on the BRICS conference, which is happening this week. I would assume we need to wait until end of this week to see some news. So let's use that opportunity to analyze some cycles within the BRICS countries, right? So that's what we will do in the next 20 to 30 minutes. And as always, this is live, so happy to take your questions latest at the end. Dale, Andrea, thanks for stepping up here. I see you in the chat already. So everyone else is invited to please give a quick hello so that I see that I'm not alone here speaking into my black dark monitor in front of me. So thank you. Okay, yeah, BRICS. I mean, I'm sure you know about that. So this is what we're talking if the term BRICS is used. Brazil, China, India, Russia, the main countries, but for sure we have a lot of other countries which are currently striving into that area. Even Turkey is in discussion. So this is really a tough challenge here. And one of their goals is, you are aware of that, to also fight for an independent currency. I would expect, especially related to maybe gold, or if they would announce some gold-backed new currency, or if they issue a crypto-based digital currency. There's a lot of rumors out there. Maybe there's an impact on the gold price, but that's pure speculation. What we can do here on the channel is let's analyze stock market data we have, and I will use the ETF which is available for those countries, and let's apply our cycle analysis to see if we get some clue on the rhythm for the companies in these countries, or the valuation of those companies. In order to do that, today I will use the iShares Big 50, so which means that this index contains the 50 largest stocks from Brazil, India, and China. So that's the reference data set we will use for today. It's not easy to find at least the mixed index maybe on that data, but let's start with that. It should give us an overview. However, this is just for education. I think if you want to dig deeper, you should analyze the individual countries or the stock market indices of those countries individual. We are now doing a consolidated analysis of these markets, or these 50 stocks which go into that basket. But for the purpose of cycle analysis and for our purpose about learning how to apply cycle analysis, that's totally valid. How will we handle that today? So I will first review the weekly data series. This is always recommended. Start with a longer term perspective. We will see what weekly cycles we can then maybe detect. Then we will nail it down into a daily analysis. So we'll use the same asset, but drill down into daily cycles. We will check what is the most dominant daily cycle. We will then bring both weekly and the daily cycle into alignment on one chart to see where those cycles maybe align or where do they sync in regards to bottoming or topping time cycles. And finally, I will show you those cycles on a price chart, because as always, if you're interested in trading, you cannot trade time, so we must trade price. And in order to do that, we need to monitor that on a price chart and then can add additional technical indicators to that. So that's now the roadmap for the next 20 minutes. Okay, the weekly series. Let's bring in the weekly series. So this is, as said, this is the iShares Big 50 weekly data series. So here we have the weekly chart with data from last Friday. And to analyze that data, we see the spectrum here at the bottom. And for the weekly data series, there's one peak which stands out in the spectrum with a length of 107 weeks. So that's the most prominent peak, at least in the spectrum here for now. And just to apply our basic measurements, it has to the left and to the right a very sharp separation. And it's really a very close or sharp peak which stands out here compared to this flat plateau here, or even that more flatter plateau here. So the shape and the height of that amplitude indicates that's a very valid cycle for further analysis. It is also seen by our ranking algorithm here as the most important cycle from that spectrum. So therefore, I would choose that as the first important cycle. There is then a possible second cycle here, which can be seen here at 179 weeks. But I would also give it a second rating due to the fact that the separation here to the right and to the left is not as sharp as with these 107 weeks. And also the strength, you see the triangle is a little bit larger than the triangle here. So the strength, which means the impact of this cycle to price swings, is much higher than this cycle here anyhow. So therefore, by design, that's the most dominant cycle here. All other peaks in that spectrum are not relevant for our analysis here. So let's start with the 107 weeks cycle in that case. So if we zoom in, let's review the rhythm of that beat here. And as you know, we're talking about time-based cycles. So what we are interested in to see that the indicated tops are in alignment with a price top, not in regards to the absolute price. So this low here is exactly at that point in time, so which you could then connect as a kind of zigzag move into those situations. So this one is skipped here, but then if we continue here, we have a nice zigzag plot here, which confirms that this cycle was only skipped by one beat here. So during that period, that cycle was skipped, but before and after, that cycle is clearly visible as the main rhythm in the BRICS, or here, Big 50 cycle. So focusing on that weekly cycle, it shows us that we should be in an upswing, which just started early this year. and seems to continue into May next year. So this upswing or the up leg of this long-term cycle seems just to have started and might continue into summer 2025. That's the weekly series. Let's now roll over to the daily analysis. Same procedure. What we see here, or let's first clean up the chart. This is now the daily perspective. We're talking now about daily cycle. And what stands out here is for sure in the spectrum, this cycle here with a length of 150 trading days. So this is plotted in trading days here in this example. So therefore 150 trading days. To the left, there is another cycle which could be taken into account of 76, which is also interesting. And by the way, the length is interesting because it's more or less half of the 150 cycle. So here we have a harmonic relation between those two most dominant peaks here. But let's start with the 150 trading days cycle first. And let's have a look at the full chart here. Here again, same procedure. We need to check the alignment between the swings from a timing perspective. And also here, it seems like that we have a nice beat on that daily cycle in the underlying changes in that daily asset class. So let's now have a closer look into what's currently happening here. And here now it becomes interesting because we are close to forming a top here. Yeah, so this final up move, which from a long-term perspective started here in May this year, is now coming to an, at least from a daily perspective, to an end, beginning of November, or we are close to that topping period, and is then indicating another down leg into January, maybe February next year. And from then onwards, the February into April, May, another up leg is expected. And if you have still in mind the weekly cycle we just discussed just some minutes ago, you might remember that the long-term cycle from the weekly series is showing an up leg starting May this year into May 2025. And this is the time, at least just what we have in mind from our analysis, when the daily and weekly cycles will come into alignment in regards to the synchronization of a possible next top to be in place. So that needs to be taken into perspective when we discuss now maybe this timing situation here for that downward move, because this is within a long-term upswing cycle which is still in place. So these are the two main cycles we can detect from the pure form of time-based dynamic cycle analysis. Let's now give a more comprehensive picture if we bring that into an technical price chart and overlay the weekly and the daily on top of each other in the same charting view, so that we can have that in a better format now to discuss the impact. In order to do that, you can use whatever charting platform you want. So there's no specific reason now why I'm using that. But just for example, I'm using here as example the Trading View platform, which is very easy to use. And for the users of the platform, maybe to say that upfront, once you have a cycle detected here in that platform, and I can show you that just in a second. Let's assume here you have this cycle, which, or whatever dominant cycle you have selected from the scanner. You can then click off Export Composite Vector. So this is a feature we have embedded into our platform. It will then export that setting to the clipboard So you just have it in your local computer now. As can be seen, it has now been copied to your local computer clipboard. And from here, you can bring that in whatever you want. So in that case, we have prepared an indicator here for you, which allows you to plot that cycle as an indicator. So you just select here the indicator composite plotter. And in that composite plotter, you just copy and paste from your clipboard that cycle, and then it will plot that cycle here in TradingView. That's exactly what I've done here. The only difference is that you don't see it as a sine wave cycle. It's just a vector. So it's just connecting the bottom and the tops via lines, because it's just a vector from time to time. So it shows up like these zigzag cycles and not like sine wave cycles. But I think we don't need to worry about that. So said that, on the top panel, let's start with that. We see our daily cycle. We just analyzed here, which indicates maybe close to a top, then a down move into end of January, and then an upswing into April. And on the bottom, we see the weekly cycle, which started with the long-term upswing here back in May 2024 and lasting into April next year. So now if this gets into sync here on those platforms, you see that that top is more or less in alignment with the secondary top here from the daily cycles, while this full move here is now in between this overall upswing here. So what we need to take into account for further timing is more the technical price condition and not just the timing condition. So therefore, I would always pay attention to at least one of my favorite indicators, which is the cyclic tuned RSI indicator. Also for public here, this is just a special edition, but this is also available, which, by the way, in that coloring here means that the red shaped background indicates here that the weekly technical indication is already overbought, which means we are close to generating a sell signal. And the signal line comes from the daily here. So if we cross through the upper band in a timing situation with the red shaded background, which means is the most interesting signal here. And I can move you back. This happened here back also the last time in May 2024, exactly at that top here. Then we had no signal, and this is now the second time the signal has been generated on the daily chart. This is how that indicator could be used. Same for bottoming here. So we had the situation just here at that point, green background, and the signal line crossed above the lower band, which was the perfect low condition here. And similar here, where we had this green shaded area and where we had that entry here. So these are the most perfect signals, and you need to set this into perspective from the weekly now. So the weekly, however, shows the upswing time-wise is in continuation mode. However, the technical situation for the weekly also indicates that we are very well above the upper band and it already turned down. So we did not generate a weekly sell signal here, but at least the technical condition suggests that there might be some time required to relax, so to come down for that indicator, which at least would indicate maybe downward pressure, short-term downward pressure, maybe in total a sideways or a slight correction in January. And then in January, we need to find if we maybe find another good re-entry point to ride that upswing into April, May next year. That's the analysis. So that's what I wanted to do here for you. 20 minutes, quick and dirty. Due to the fact that we have the BRICS week out there, You have a weekly cycle, you have a daily cycle, and I showed you how to bring that together on a price chart and how to start to read the time-based cycles and in addition adding technical indicators to see the context of maybe the short-term correction within the longer-term upswing, which is still there. So that's it for today. I hope you liked today's episode. I have a little cold today, so please excuse, maybe my voice is not the best. But now, time to take your questions, right? So feel free to drop in whatever you want to ask. At least I will take a look to your question. That's the other purpose why we are here and live, because I want to use the time, or at least be available for you. Yeah, so this is your time. So this is your quality time with the foundation to ask questions, which I will then take very serious to give you the best answers, at least I can. Maybe there are other indices here, NH, what you suggest. And yes, please see what we just shared here as an educational purposes. I think you need to analyze each country or each stock market individually with cycles and then check if they align. This is just a composite price series, as you mentioned, derived from different categories, different sectors, and maybe there are better indices. So I'm not aware about that index in specific, but this is exactly what you should do. So I would really encourage you use the cycle analyzer to also cross-validate the cycles I just shared here with you, if they also can be confirmed in similar indexes related to that area. And NH, to stick to your question, so the export feature of the cycle, so this is the composite vector. I'm not finally sure if this is a premium member feature. I need to cross-validate that. So I try to follow up that answer in the section below that video. I cannot answer it right away. So before I say something different, please NH look that up in the answers below the video. I will also request and get back to our service team to give you the correct answer. Yeah, that's a good, I like that one. Lean Sun Tzu, can you show the Millard on the day cycle and then on the weekly? So you refer maybe to a topic we discussed here in previous sessions. So therefore, I like your question and I will go back to those charts. And for everyone else, when we talk about Millard, we are referring to the cycle highlighter. Brian Millard, who extended the work of Hurst and also did publish 1 or 2 books after Hurst did his initial findings, and Millard, for example, invented the so-called cycle highlighter, which gives you a visual or better visual idea about how good or how bad that cycle is in regards to the real price action. And we can activate that on our price chart. So I will now phase out the question that you can see the screen better and bring in the so-called Millard visualization. So this is the weekly. Okay. And now to have a better idea if this is a real cycle or the variation of that cycle is the best, we can open that in our info box, which now opens up this indicator-like plot, which we see here. Let me try also to make that bigger on the chart. So this is now shown on the bottom. It's not exactly the Brian Millard way, but it shows you the light blue line. The light blue line is the extracted or the band passed price information according to that length. And the red is just the theoretical cycle in phase with the cycle detection. And if you have a correlation between the light blue line and the red line, that means that the real price action has a high correlation due to that cycle. So the amplitude and frequency variation is very low, which you see here in that case. We have a slight amplitude variation to the upside, but the turn in price is exactly in the theoretical point here. We have the low confirmation. We had a little bit out of phase here in 2018 and 19, but as said before, 2016, here we have almost perfect correlation between the real price swings related to that cycle compared to the theoretical cycle. So there's just one period where we had a bad correlation. All the other swings have been in sync. What we could detect to the current situation here, that the amplitude is being a little bit subdued. So the amplitude modulation is lower than the theoretical. While we here had an increasing amplitude, we see here a decreasing amplitude, which in total is an indication that that long-term cycle is not as prominent or is not impactful as it was in the past. So maybe that cycle is fading out. It's not as important anymore as it was here in the past. But that's just how to read that. So that's the weekly Millard highlighter, and we can do the same on the daily. Let's just organize the chart screen here. So this is the 150 days cycle. Let's open up the info. Oh, sorry, no, I deactivated that. Let's open up our info box, and this also brings up the cycle highlighter. Let's zoom in here, and again we need to validate the movement of the light blue, according to the theoretical red one, which is quite perfect here. So there's almost no amplitude and no frequency variation, and starting in 2022 up to 2023, even moving now 2023. So even though while the amplitude modulation we can see here, so the cycle has not become as prominent as before, but the frequency component, so the time component, here is the low and here is the stop, is still there. So the cycle from a time variation is still high valid. And here now the amplitude becomes larger again, while the time frequency is also fine. So we're just at that point here. So the daily has a much better correlation, the Millard cycle highlighter, which seems that the daily cycle is high accurate with low amplitude and frequency variation over time, which is also a quite different measure like persistence. So it's just the extension of the idea from Brian Millard brought in here into that visualization shape. So I hope, Lin Sun-Su, that helped to answer your question. And also it's important because that feature or that knowledge from Brian Millard is able to redo in our platform here. So Peter, can you explain the reading and interpretation of the phase score in the cycle info box? Sure, let's do that. Let's get back to the info box, and if you refer to the info box, you're referring to the lower right section here. So, or you can activate the info box here with a right click on these three dots, which gives you different options here, and one option is to open the info box with the Brian Millard cycle highlighter, and you see also the phase score. The phase score is just a different mathematical interpretation from the phase measured in Bogenmaß, something like that. So I've just converted the phase score from -100 to plus 100. So where minus 100 is the low. So let me show you this also maybe here on a cycle. So if we would have a current low, we would have a score of minus 100. And if the current situation is a top, we would have a score of plus 100. And as you can see, we are close to a top. So, and it moves here from minus 100, then going up into the 20, 30, 50, 60. And I think this is what you see here. So we have the score of 60. And if we would come to the top, if you would be here, you would see a phase score of 100. So but it's just a transformation of the phase, the real phase from minus P to plus P. So in mathematical terms, you would have minus 3.1.5.4, whatever P is in that exact number, to plus pi. This is the phasing score from the frequency analysis. I've just converted it from minus 100 to plus 100, which gives you a kind of oscillator for the phase. So that's the phase score about. Okay, so I would call it a Cycles TV episode for today. As always, let's monitor the news this week now coming from the BRICS conference. And let's see if it will impact the financial markets somehow at the end of the week. Otherwise, we have done our Cycles homework, at least to start the week. So see you next week, Monday, same time, same place. Have a nice week. And if you want to follow up, put some questions and comments down below.